Hello, my name's Tim. Welcome to Tim Burbage Reads, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Spider-Man Life Story. So, Spider-Man Life Story, written by Chip Zdarsky, and the penciling done by Mark Bagley. Let me just get their names. Inks done by John Dell and Andrew Hennessy. Colours by Frank D'Armata, and lettering by Astarte Design. So this answers the question of what if Spider-Man grew up? So Spider-Man is the most popular comic book character. His films have made the most money. His comic books sell the most. He has the most TV shows and merchandise and all kinds of stuff. One of the problems with that in the real world is that Marvel Comics won't let Spider-Man grow up. He will always be a young person. He moved from being in school, he's now like a young adult, struggling to pay rent. He has businesses, they collapse, he goes up, all that kind of thing. But he is never allowed to really mature. And comics often have a very elastic timeline to stop characters aging out. And people were desperate for Spider-Man to grow up. And this comic, which is set in an alternative universe, I can't remember which universe its number is Spider-Man grows up. He becomes an adult. He becomes a dad. He becomes an old man. And this is a 6-issue miniseries. This is the whole book. And each issue takes place in a different decade. So we start off with the 60s, then we go 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, and then 2010s. This was written in 2019. So this is why we don't go into the 2020s. And this is fantastic. So what we do is we have one issue per decade. So it is a story that is told in its completion, because you can't have a cliffhanger that then pick up approximately 10 years time later. That's not how this works. But it's about an issue in Spider-Man's life at the time that then is dealt with. And even though this is an alternative universe, this still hits so many of the famous beats throughout Spider-Man's story. We have references to Civil War, we have references to the Clone Saga, we have references to Kraven's Last Hunt, we have references to the Superior Spider-Man run, and Secret Wars, and all kinds of things are in this. But they're told in the timeline of them happening in the Marvel Comics. So there's a bit about the Clone Saga in the 70s, 80s is Secret Wars, that kind of thing. But Peter Parker gets older throughout. And we see how his body changes and how his attitude changes. And this starts in the 1960s, and the dilemma that Peter is going through is whether to go and fight in Vietnam, because he has superpowers. He is a superpowered individual, and he could go to Vietnam and he could save soldiers' lives. How do you with great power comes great responsibility, and he is thinking about this a lot. And he sees that Tony Stark and Captain America have taken different aspects of that, which then feed through to the Civil War. That kind of seeds of Civil War are sown in the 1960s. Then in the 1970s, we deal with some clone stuff going on. We even have the Black Goblin appears. Look at that. Oh, it's so cool. And we get the reveal on who's the real Peter, who's not the real Peter, who's the real Gwen, who's not the real Gwen. Then we're in the 1970s, and we get... then we're in the 1980s, and we get Secret Wars. We get a fantastic panel like that. And that's just setting the scene of what Secret Wars is. And you see all of the characters, or a lot of the characters are aging, including Reed Richards. He also ages throughout this. And you see Peter get the Spidey suit, the Venom suit. You see what happens with that and the real life implications, and that leads to something similar to Kraven's Last Hunt. And then at the 90s, you meet Doc Ock is still going, but he's very old, because that's one thing, is that all of his villains age up as well. And one thing that's interesting with this is that this doesn't really introduce new villains. You meet Venom, you meet Kraven, you meet Doc Ock, you meet the Green Goblin, you meet all of his kind of famous foes. You meet in the 2000s, it's the story of the Spider Totem story, which is kind of a famous storyline with the vampire. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I would say the vampire is the only modern villain that you meet. The rest of them are from the 1960s heyday of Spider-Man, and with that you see how they age up, and you see how Peter Parker is kind of coping with his mortality because of the mortality of all of his enemies that have been his fiercest foes get beaten by Father Time. And then in the last issue, you see, like, look how old Peter is there at the end. You know, he is an old man, and he's taking on Miles Morales as his protege, and you end up with a battle inside his mind, and you get a super cool split panel of all of his old foes versus all of his old iterations of being Spider-Man. And this is just the art. As I've shown you, the art is outstanding. The writing is brilliant. Even in such short bits, you get a real sense of the characterization. This helps if you know the characters and you know the plot beats, and you can recognize, hey, I know what's going on here. But I think even if you can't, it's still really enjoyable. The art's fantastic. And what this shows, which I think all good Spider-Man comics show, is that the real hero, the real interesting character, isn't Spider-Man. It's Peter Parker. Peter Parker is the one who makes the difficult choices. Peter Parker is the one who sacrifices so much for people who don't even know who he is. And that's something to really aspire to be a hero. Kids dress up like Spider-Man and pretend to have his superpowers. Being able to swing and climb walls and be a little bit sticky isn't really his superpower. His superpower is what makes him Peter Parker, the fact that he's willing to stand up for the little guy at all times. I think that's something to aspire to. So, yeah, I read this as part of a comic club with Timo and Sam Harrison and Charlie Read a Book. I don't know if he's read this one yet. Read a book. It was really, really great. And I've read this before. Very happy to read it again. And I really recommend it. My wife bought it for me as a gift, and I'm very, very happy about that. So that is Spider-Man, Life Story. Let me know in the comments below what your favourite Spider-Man book is, favourite Spider-Man run, and please give this a like, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Now, get out of my house!